Hi, my name is Jobby, and we're talking about The Batman. Not that one. The movie that came out this year. This is the first live-action Batman movie in a while, and I was really excited for it. If you couldn't tell by now, I'm kind of a Bat fan. So did this movie live up to the incredibly high expectations I set for it? In a way, yes. But on the topic of Batman and hiding your identity, I recommend Surfshark VPN, the sponsor of this video. Sharks, get it? Without a virtual private network, browsing the internet is basically like being Batman prowling the dark streets of Gotham without wearing a mask. Dumb, I know. Surfshark's like an all-encompassing cowl, keeping all your important secrets, like your emails, your passwords, your furry fetish, private and secure. Surfshark VPN also lets you virtually travel the world by changing your IP address. You got a choice of over 3,200 servers in 65 countries. Use that to get better deals online. Some stores change their prices depending on where you're shopping from. I linked an article in the description about price discrimination that you should read. Or you can use Surfshark to watch region-locked content on Netflix. While the first two movies of the Nolan Batman trilogy are on American Netflix, The Dark Knight Rises isn't. And that's a big problem. For you. But switch your location to France, and now you could watch a movie that honestly gets way too much hate. Or you could switch to Australia and watch Michael Keaton's Batman or Batman and Robin if that's your thing. Cool body. Point is, you don't need to pay for a whole nother streaming service. Surfshark VPN also includes your very own bat signal in the form of Surfshark Alert, letting you know when any of your sensitive information's been compromised. Surfshark's available to download on iOS, Android, Mac, Windows, Linux, just about everything. So check the link in the description and use my promo code JOBBY to get 83% off and 3 extra months free. But if you don't see the point of a mask, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. Thanks again to Surfshark for supporting the channel and for keeping my darkest secrets safe. I have a crippling porn addiction. Due to obvious copyright concerns, there will not be a lot of clips in this review, so get used to the view. So first, I'm gonna try to talk about it as spoiler-free as I can, and then we'll go into a spoiler section. But overall thoughts, I really enjoyed this movie. My number one takeaway from the film was its atmosphere. The movie is just drenched in a nice, snuggly nightmare blanket. I may have stolen that term from someone, I don't know. But it's a good way to describe it. Everything from the camera work, the lighting, the acting, which is great, we'll get into it more later. The music! This movie has a brilliant soundtrack. However, it's a little bit overbearing at some points, and I don't want to talk any shade about Michael Giacchino. Is that how you pronounce it? Giacchino. There you go. But the main theme of the film, all of you have heard it by now. Bum 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 bum. It's gonna get stuck in your head forever. As overbearing as the music may be, at least it's got a catchy main theme. Cinematic music hasn't been that great for a while. And going back to my nightmare blanket analogy, it's a strangely cozy and hypnotic film, and that might be due to the length of the movie. And that is something that some people are gonna hang up on. This movie is long. And to be honest, I did feel the length of it toward the end. Caped Crusader, more like Caped Energizer Bunny, because it keeps going and going and going. Not even Return of the King had this many endings. The length wasn't that bad, but the fact that I felt it might have been due to the limited locations of the film, which is fine. I understand that this is a more grounded, more contained Batman story about the city of Gotham, but I don't know. I played Arkham Knight, as mentioned in my previous review, and Gotham definitely has more locations than the Iceberg Lounge, Wayne Manor, a church, and the center of the city. I could be missing some locations, but that is just about the amount. I suppose that wouldn't be that big of an issue, but he goes to the Iceberg Lounge 3 times in the film. I felt the repetition, although I did like the twin running gag. For some reason, random twins in movies are always hilarious. And that's something to be said about the movie as well. As dark and gritty as it is, it's actually got a few funny moments and an overall hopeful tone. And I think at this point, I might as well get into the spoilers because I want to get into specifics now. I've been as vague as possible. Funny moments. I mean, the whole El Rata El Lada conversation with the penguin, that was hilarious. And Colin Farrell, Jesus Christ, Colin Farrell was a standout in this film. He is a side character, but completely invisible, completely unrecognizable as the Penguin. There's a part of me that's confused as to why they even cast Colin Farrell if they're not gonna show off his beautiful looks, but that's kind of a dumb question. Colin Farrell has proved time and time again that he's a brilliant actor, and the Penguin is no exception. Can't wait to see more from him, although I'm not too interested in the HBO Max series. You see, the thing about most of Batman's rogues gallery is that they kind of don't work without Batman, except Joker. Joker's a good movie. And we'll talk more about the Joker later. Colin Farrell, excellent, partakes in one of the best scenes in the film, the Batmobile chase. Jesus Christ, the build-up to that scene, the reveal of the Batmobile is one of the best that I've seen in a Batman movie. I think a big part of that was the sound design of the thruster. Oh my god. Made me my pants until it kind of went on for too long. Again, felt the length. A lot of collateral damage in that scene as well, but I guess Bruce Wayne could foot the bill. And I have been ignoring the big old bat in the room, Robert Pattinson. Great. And I understand Robert Pattinson has a sort of reputation, but I'm here to say, get the hell over it. Robert Pattinson's a great actor. If you guys haven't seen Good Time, I recommend watching that. And The Lighthouse, of course. Makes me wish that Willem Dafoe could have had a reunion with him. Again, we'll talk about Society later. This take on Batman is clearly meant to be a younger, more inexperienced Batman, and Robert Pattinson fits the role really well. He's consumed by vengeance and nothing else. And Robert Pattinson portrays the humanity of Batman in a really great way. Of course, a big part of this is due to the writing, but I think this has gotta be the most interesting live-action Batman we've had. Because that's the thing about most Batman movies, right? Most people don't watch Batman movies for Batman. It's mostly about what's the villain gonna be? He's gonna be a wacky, kooky character. But no, in this movie, the Batman himself is just as interesting as the villain, which is also great. They really did the Riddler justice here. A really sick reimagining of a traditionally goofy character, but still retaining that sense of humor that's kind of inherent to the character. A dark and twisted sense of humor, which I appreciate, but a sense of humor nonetheless. And Paul Dano knocked it out of the park. I love how he's just breaching the line of hamminess, but he doesn't go too over the top. I especially love his man-child tantrum when Senpai rejects him. It just seems Paul Dano's just good at playing those characters. Anyone watch There Will Be Blood? I drink your milkshake, Nigma! Sorry, Nashton. Nigma might have been too risque for modern audiences. Maybe I shouldn't be saying Nigma so much. Nigma balls. And speaking of modern politics, let's talk about Catwoman. Specifically talking about that white privilege line. Cringe. But Catwoman as a character, they also nailed really great acting from Zoe Kravitz, and I love how they incorporated elements of the Long Halloween into the film. Well, first of all, the movie opening up on Halloween is amazing. And second of all, the twist of Carmine Falcone being Catwoman's dad. I always thought that was a great idea, and they executed it really well here. I really hope that this isn't the last time we see of this Catwoman. You know, my friend Omar, aka Sybil, made the joke about the end of the film where Catwoman asked Batman if he wants to get out of Gotham with her. Omar could not be Batman because he would immediately say yes. Horny bastard. I can relate. But anyway, Catwoman, great supporting protagonist. And on the topic of Catwoman's dad, surprising turn from John Turturro, also known as... And if you guys didn't know, John Turturro plays Carmine Falcone in this film. I always knew that he was primarily a dramatic actor, but I grew up with Mr. Deeds and, of course, so his portrayal of a ruthless, murderous, borderline incestuous mob boss was surprisingly effective. Part of me feels bad that the character was killed. He really made his mark as a worthy Batman villain in this film. We are far from the days of... But you know, I'll never forget. And talking about that plot development, why don't we talk about the plot? A really solid detective murder mystery starring the Batman, as Batman stories should be. At this point, I'm a bit burnt out on Batman fighting aliens. Really love the contained storyline of this film, while also doubling as a sort of coming-of-age film for Batman. I'd even say that thematically, this is a great counterpart to the Joker movie. Both films are about these iconic comic book characters accepting who they're really meant to be, within their perception, of course. Joker accepts that he's an irredeemable outcast of society, while Batman accepts that he needs to be a beacon of hope for the citizens of Gotham. Brilliantly illustrated in that scene where he's confronting one of the Riddler's minions. Great incorporation of supervillain minions, by the way. And this guy says a line that Batman himself said earlier in the movie.
I'm vengeance.
Robert Pattinson, man, he's great with acting with his eyes. Unlike me, which is why I wear these glasses so you can't tell I'm reading off a teleprompter. Just kidding. This particular video is completely unscripted and unhinged. Just like this Batman. Until the end of the movie where he steps up to the plate and decides to be who he is truly meant to be. Great counterpoint to the earlier narration of the film where he claims that he is the shadows.
For you.
And with the scene of him lighting up a flare, becoming a light in the shadows. Ah, poetic. And about that narration, let's just say I may have cut myself on that edge. Ah, shit. I think for some viewers that's gonna be off-putting because I don't think Batman has ever been this mid-2000s high school edgy. But I grew up a mid-2000s high schooler. I love that shit. And I assume that he'll grow out of it in the later films, becoming that more confident, less overcompensating Dark Knight. Matter of fact, I don't think Nirvana was an edgy enough song choice. I was half expecting to hear, I'm not okay. I'm not okay. Told you I grew up with this bullshit. Didn't affect my enjoyment of the character. Besides those narration bits, I loved how silent this version of Batman was. Again, Robert Pattinson does a great acting job only with his eyes, especially in that scene where he discovers what a carpet tucker is. I didn't even know what that shit was, but I expected Batman to know. I don't know. That might be an aspect that some hardcore Bat fans would take issue with. This version doesn't seem as worldly as the traditional one. I don't even know if Batman traveled the world and trained with ninjas because Alfred mentions that he taught Bruce how to fight. And I don't know how to feel about that. But I do know that Alfred was pretty good and the very limited screen time that he had worked well for the plot, but I hope we get to see more Andy Serkis in the future. And I really can't wait where the movie series goes from here. I just hope that it doesn't get too caught up in HBO Max spin-offs because I don't want to have to watch a TV show in order to understand the movies. Star Wars! Did anyone even watch Book of Boba Fett? I stopped giving a shit after Mando Season 2. While there was a lot to love about the movie, there were some little tiny things keeping me from loving the movie overall, as opposed to really liking it. First of all, the pacing, which is what I assume is the reason why I felt the length of the film, but that's a critique that I am not qualified to get into. I mean, do you see the length of this video? But I can't deny that I personally felt it. Don't know how I would solve it though. And second of all, the rating. I'm not a gore hound by any means, but I feel that this movie would have benefited from an R rating. You know, it's not the same when you hear about a guy getting his face eaten by rats instead of actually seeing that. Not that I want to see some guy's face getting eaten by rats. Kind of do want to see that. I'm just saying that the visual itself speaks to the weight and the gravity of the stakes of the plot. That's a lot of ofs. I hope that made sense. Violence not for the sake of violence, but for dramatic weight. Kinda unrelated, but I feel that Invincible does a great job at utilizing ultra-violence to raise the stakes of a story. It's weird that they didn't. I know Batman is a traditionally family-friendly character, but I mean, Joker made $1 billion. It wouldn't have been that much of a financial risk. And speaking of funny society, man, he makes a brief but memorable appearance in this film. And yes, it was confirmed to be this universe's take on the character. I didn't like it. No offense to Barry Conal, but I think I've just been spoiled by brilliant cinematic portrayals of the Joker at this point. Not him. That anyone else that tries to take up the mantle is gonna have a rough time. And again, this is not Barry's fault. It's just me personally. But who knows? Maybe if they develop the character in future films, I'll be sold. But the brief glimpse that we got felt too much like an edgy mid-2000s high schooler. But that short, tiny scene is not enough to weigh down on the film. I enjoyed this movie immensely. So, to grade this film, it's always been hard to grade films the same way I do as toys, which is what I usually talk about on this channel. Like, comment, subscribe. So these guys are going to take a step back here. I'm going to give this movie a solid 8 out of 10. Closer to a 9 than a 7, but that might change on rewatching it. Speaking of that, fellow YouTuber, I actually missed the first few seconds of the film because me and my friends overestimated how much trailers would play before the movie. So we took our time before going into the auditorium and had a lot of drinks. And by the time we walked into the theater, 20 minutes after the listed showtime, Riddler was peeking into his first victim. So because I missed the first few seconds, that means I didn't watch the entire movie. Opinion invalidated. Also, I actually like Free Guy, so my opinion doesn't matter on anything.